Hi, my name's Stuart Lynch. Sometimes your UI calls for a bit of creativity. You may not always want to use a modal sheet or a navigation stack to present your edit views to your users to update some of your content. In this video, I'm going to show you how you can use SwiftUI to create what I'm calling an OverTop view. That'll display an edit view directly over top of the presenting view, but still display the view behind it, but prevent the users from interacting with that view. And this video will be followed a week later by another one that will enhance this solution to make it more generic and even more useful. I love getting your feedback, so tap the thumbs up button if you enjoyed the video and leave me a comment below. Make sure you subscribe to my channel and ring that bell to get notifications whenever I release a new video. And if you want to support my work, you can buy me a coffee. A link is in the description. There is a starter project for this video, and you can download it from the link in the description. There are 3 different branches in this repository, and the one you want is the starter project branch. And this contains the basic app that we'll use to build out our solution. There is a completed code part 1 branch that will contain the completed source code for this video, and the 3rd branch will contain the completed source code for the follow-up video on this topic. Just download and expand the zipped archive from the starter branch to begin this project. Now, there's really not that much to this app right now. The app will launch into this demo view here, and it contains a navigation stack with a Z stack inside displaying a red color background. The foreground view contains 4 elements: a V stack displaying a user profile, 2 text views displaying a size and age range, and both are styled differently, and lastly, a purchase date. Currently, these fields are not editable, but they are represented by state properties that could be updated if we choose. Now, I could just make these text views text fields and these text views pickers, and this labeled content could contain a date picker. However, what we want to accomplish in this video and in the next is to be able to present what I am calling a top overview that'll be presented whenever I tap on one of the objects or in an associated button that will allow me to change these values in another view, yet still have this current view visible behind it. The update view is going to be overlaid over top, and thus the name. In this video, we'll do all the work to create the structure for this solution, and we'll be able to create the updates for our size and age range pickers. In the second video in this series, we'll create a protocol for our OverTop view and make the object to be changed generic so that we can use the same technique to change the text fields or a group of text fields like this, or change the background color or update a date. So let's get started by creating the groundwork. These 2 text fields will be basically the same. I want to be able to present a view over top of this whenever I tap on one of those fields. Now, each field is different, so I'll need a Boolean property to do that. Think of this as an alert with an isPresented bound to a bool. So we'll create 2 properties for that. I'm going to keep them both together in top of my view. So the first will be selected size for the changing of the size. And it'll be initialized as false. The second will be a select age range, and that's going to be used to change the age range that is currently set as 10 to 15. Again, it's initialized as false. Now we can attach an on-tap gesture to both of these text views, and that will switch that state to be true. And I want to present the view gradually, so I'll do that in an animation block. Once for the select size, and then again, I'll do it for the select age range. So let's create a view that we'll be able to place over top of this view, but still see what's behind it, so that it'll display a picker along with either 1 or 2 buttons that will allow me to save or cancel the change. So this means we can't pass in the current values as bindings, but rather just as strings, and only update if we've chosen the save option. So I'm going to create a new SwiftUI view, and I'm going to call it OverTop PickerView. And it's going to look like this. I'll need to supply a string for the title, as it'll be different depending on what I'm changing. I'll need an array of strings to use for the picker, and a current value to set the picker at. And either one or two buttons, but in the case of the Save button, I want to only update the current value if I tap on Save. So I won't be passing in the current value as a binding, but rather I'll pass in a closure as well from the presenting view that will then receive the updated value from this view if I tap on Save, and that will allow me to update the content in the presenting view. So what are the properties that I need to pass in when presenting the view? So first, a title that's going to be a string, and this is going to allow us to update this title. I'll need an array of choices as an array of string, so we can pass in a different array depending on what we want to choose from. In our case, it's either going to be a size or a date range. And I'll need a current value that is also a string. And then I'll need a state property that I'll call updated content that we can update as soon as this view is initialized with the current value, so that I can use that updated content state property in the picker to allow for updates. I'll need a Boolean property called has2buttons so that I can decide if I want to have just one save button or if I want to also have a cancel one as well. And since this presentation is going to be displayed as the result of a state Boolean, so to dismiss this view, we'll have to set it to false. We'll need to provide a Boolean binding for this. And I'm going to call that show over top. Finally, since we're not passing in that current value in as an update, it will not change in the presenting view until we tell it to do. So I'll have to pass in an update function from the presentation view that we'll be able to perform only when we want it. So this will be a closure that I'll call update, accepting a string and returning nothing. Now, even though this is a struct that has a member-wise initializer, we do need to initialize the update current property with the current value that is passed in, so we can use it as a binding for our picker view. In addition, I want to default that it has two buttons to be false, but provide a second initializer for this view that will allow me to set it to true if I really want it. So this means that we'll need to create a custom initializer for this view. Now, I'll let Xcode generate it for me, but we'll need to make some changes as it's not correct. As I said, update content is not going to be passed in, so we can remove it from here in the parameters. But in the body, we can initialize our state property using an underscore updated current and assign to it a state property where the initial value is the current value that we're passing in. Now the showing over top is a binding to a bool. So we'll need to use an underscore in the closure. And I'm going to have to do one more thing that will result in there being two initializers. In the initializer's parameters here, I'm going to provide a false value for has two buttons. So this will give us the ability to leave it out if we just want one button, which might be our standard. Now I'll need to provide some arguments for our preview. So for the title, how about select size? And then the choices, they'll come from somewhere in your app, or they may be hard-coded right here in this view, or you might have some mock data for this. But let's just use these. It's going to be an array of sizes, so extra, small, small, medium, large, large, tall, extra large, or extra large, tall. So we can pick one for the current value. So how about medium? And then the show over top can just be a constant of false. The update is a closure, so we'll get an updated value that we can call update and use it in the closure. So we'll just print it to the console whenever the update function is executed. Well, now that we have the initializer all set, we can create our view. So I'm going to replace the body content with a V-stack. Then I'll add some padding and apply a frame with a width of 300. As the first item in the VStack, I'm going to present a text view displaying our title, and I'll set the font to a Title 2 type. Next, I'll display a picker, and you can use the string makeSelection, and the selection will be bound to our updated content state property. For the picker itself, you can iterate through all of the choices with a for each loop where the ID is self, and that's going to give us a choice item that we can use to display in a text view. And I'm going to use a picker style of wheel. Below that, I'm going to create an H stack to present our buttons. Now, if our has2buttons property is true, we can present a button. So we'll present that button with the label cancel. And then within an animation block, we can simply set the show OverTop to false. And I'm going to set the style for this button to be bordered. Now, whether it has two buttons or not, we will always be displaying a save button. So next to that in the H stack, we'll create another button with the label save. It too will have an animation block to set the OverTop to false. But here we're also going to perform the update function that's being passed in from the presenting view, and we have an argument for that needs to be a string that will be our updated content value. And for this, I'll set the style of the button to a bordered prominent. You can see in our preview, though, that we're only displaying one button because has2buttons property has been defaulted to false, and we haven't offered that in our preview. So we can go to our preview initializer here, though, and we could add one more property just before the show OverTop value. And that will be set to the value of true if we like. So now we can see the two buttons in our view. Now let's make the view stand out a bit more now, though, by adding a background. And this can be a rounded rectangle with a corner radius of 20. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set the fill to be the same color that we have right now, which is a color of system background. And then I'm going to apply a shadow where the color will be black with an opacity of 0.3. I'm going to set the radius of that shadow to 10, 0 in the X direction, but 5 in the Y direction. And then I can move this up in the view by applying an offset of minus 100 in the Y direction. And you can see that now when I make a selection and I tap on that button, the update function is being executed, and we can see the updated value is being printed to the preview console. Well, this looks good, but if we were to display this view over top of our existing view, that background behind our view here is going to hide the entire view. And the solution is to embed this entire content in a Z-stack. Now, this view is going to be presented in a Z-stack over top of our existing presenting view. So we can set the color to be a color of system background, but set the opacity to be only 0.4 when our showing over top is true. Otherwise, it can be anything because it won't be displayed, but we can set it to 1. And then we can ignore the safe area, so that color view is going to be filling the entire screen behind our nice V-stack in the middle, or 100 pixels up. When this view is being displayed, though, over top, if someone taps in the outside area, we'll want to dismiss the view. So we can create an on-tap gesture on our color view in the background. And then within an animation block, we'll set that show OverTop to false again. I didn't realize I didn't capture the full V-stack when I enclosed it in a Z stack. This offset should only apply to the V stack. So let me move it up just to that content. Our OverTop view is now complete. So how do we present it over top of our demo view? In our demo view, what we'll want to do is to surround this navigation stack with a Z stack, and then conditionally display that OverTop view only if the selected size or the selected age range properties are set to true. And then we'll need to check to see which one was actually toggled and present the corresponding OverTop view. Well, the best way to do this is to create a view modifier. So I'm going to create a Swift file, and I'm going to call it OverTop ViewModifier. And I'll change the import to SwiftUI. Inside here, I can create a new struct that I'll call OverTop ViewModifier, and that has to conform to the ViewModifier protocol. And that has a single requirement, which is a function called body that will receive the entire content that we are applying this modifier to and return some new view. So we can return just content, and of course nothing would happen. But we want to take that content and do something with it. And it's exactly what I just said. We want to pass in the entire navigation stack. So what we want to do is embed that in a Z stack and then present our OverTop picker, but only if the show OverTop property has been set to true. So let's first pass in that property as a let show OverTop. It's a Boolean. And we'll also have to pass in an instance of an OverTop view, and that's our OverTop PickerView. So in the body function, then we can surround the content, which is the navigation stack. That's what's being passed in with a Z stack. And then as the first element of the Z stack, that's going to be the content. So it'll be in the background, the entire navigation stack. But if show OverTop is true, we'll display our OverTop view. That's that V stack that's 100 pixels up from the center. And the one final thing that we'll need to do here is that when it gets dismissed, in order for the transition within the animation block to happen smoothly, we'll need to provide a Z index of 1 for this view. And then to make this easier to implement, we're going to create an extension for our view, which is typical for view modifiers. And inside the extension, I'm going to create a function called OverTop that simply has two parameters that match the same ones for our view modifier. So show OverTop is a bool, and OverTop view, which is an OverTop PickerView. And it will need to return some view. And then we can apply the modifier function on our view, because that's what our extension is on. And then we'll pass into that the view modifier with the matching arguments to the parameters. That's it. We just have to implement it now. So back within the demo view, we've got that navigation stack completely collapsed. So it's easy for us now to see that we need to apply that new modifier to that entire navigation stack. So we'll call the .OverTop modifier. It requires two arguments. For the show OverTop, we're going to provide the select size property. And then for the OverTop PickerView, we'll create a new instance of that. And you can see that I have two choices, one with two buttons and one without. So let's choose the one without first. For the title, we can use the string select size. And for the choices, as I mentioned when we were doing the preview, they can come from wherever you want in your app. And I'm just going to use the same array that I used for our preview. So I'll just copy it and use it here. The current choice is our state property of current size. And the binding to the show OverTop is the binding to the select size. If you tap on the update function, you'll get the closure that will be coming from our view along with the updated string. So here in this view, we can call it update, and then we can apply that update to our current size, thus changing the size selected to the one we selected in our OverTop view. And you can test this out now when you tap on that first size text view. The on-tap gesture will set the selected size to true, which will then present our OverTop view with our selection picker, and we can choose to select the choice we want. And then when we tap on save, the view dismisses, and our current size is updated with that content. If we try it one more time and make a selection, but we don't tap on save, but outside of that picker view, it dismisses the view, but it doesn't update. That's exactly what I want. Well, not everyone is as smart as me who knows that I can tap outside to dismiss the view. So our second view then, I want to offer that cancel button that will do exactly the same thing. And we could just duplicate this OverTop ViewModifier and change things, but for practice, let's start from scratch again. We're going to apply another OverTop modifier, and the show OverTop is triggered this time by the select age range. And then we'll need another instance of an OverTop view, which is our OverTop PickerView. And this time we'll choose the initializer that has 2 buttons. For the title, we'll specify the string select age range. For the choices array, I'll just make up a number of age ranges. So I'm going to use 0 to 5, 6 to 10, 11 to 20, 21 to 30, 31 to 50, and 50 plus. So for the current value, it's the one that we declared in our state property, which is the age range property. And it has 2 buttons, so this time we'll specify true. And the update function will provide us with a new range, and we can apply that new range to the age range, thus updating our view. Let me fix that typo. This should be a comma, not a period. Testing now, I can tap on that second text view for our age range, and over top appears that new picker view, and we can see now we have 2 buttons this time. I can select the age, then tap on save, and it dismisses, and we get the update displayed. If we try again and make a change, but this time we can tap cancel instead of just outside of the view, and it dismisses, and the age doesn't get changed. Well, that's enough for this video, and it's working great. We can create as many of these string pickers as I want, but that doesn't help me if I want to use the same idea for an array of colors that I want to supply. Or what if I'm going to change the background, which is a color? Or I want to change the date. It won't be passing in an array at all. Similarly, if I want to update this entire profile, I want to pass in the entire object and update it on return. So we have some more work to cut out for us in the next video. What we're going to have to create is a protocol for this to allow us to create a view modifier for any type of OverTop view that we want, so long as it has some particular requirements. And to make it easier to create our views, I want to create a code snippet that will require minimum work in the future. So join me in the next video where we'll do that. It will be released 1 week from this one, so you may already see the link in the description if you're watching this video a week after release. If you found this tutorial helpful, please give it a thumbs up and leave me a comment. You can subscribe to my channel to get notifications of new videos, and remember that you can also download my YouTube channel listing app for free and quick access to all of my 350 plus YouTube videos. A link's in the description. And also remember, I have a full SwiftUI course available on my Teachable site where you learn how to build a fun multi-targeted app.